Hello everyone, so welcome to this tutorial, and we will be looking at creating a turntable animation, and this will be applicable for both character and the 3D environment class, and we'll be saving different scenes to create different materials. For example, we need to create this lighting view, this lighting and textured view, and we also need to create the checkered and the shaded. And for the individual class, I know for character there is a set of requirements, and for the 3D environment is different. So do check back on the blackboard for specific materials that we need to render out, the turntables, but more or less the technique is the same. So let's have a look and let's get started. So you have your scene here, and alright, cool. So you have your scene here, and there's the camera and the lighting, everything is set up, the texture is all done. So the first thing we want to do is to create a camera, and we can lock the camera. Let's create the camera here, we lock it, then we can lock it later, so that we can just make sure it stays there while we set up the rest of the turntable. So across different scenes that we save, it would always stay there without any issues. So let's quickly call this the render cam, and let's turn on the mask, and oops, sorry. Alright, let's do that, and let's just position this roughly somewhere along here, and I'm happy with this view. So having some headroom over here and some space at the bottom. So the first thing, we just need to quickly go and check that our preset, it's in HD 1080, so that's the brief submission. So that's here, and so the camera should be, let's quickly view, select camera, and alright, so let's quickly lock down the camera. And we can do that by going to the attributes editor and render cam. We can come over to translate, right click and lock attribute, rotate, lock attribute, and scale, lock attribute, so it will be locked. In that sense, now you can try it, and we can't move it at all. And so that's that for the camera being set up, and we can still come to perspective view and move around and adjust anything, but render cam wise, it's more or less fixed. So for the turntable animation, we're actually turning the mesh. I'm going to go to object selection mode. We're turning the mesh, and so we'll be animating the mesh instead. And so let's quickly group this together, and let's open up the outline, and okay, let's hit Control G or Command G if you're on a Mac. So let's quickly just call this the character, or you can call it whatever you want. I'll just call it the character group. And okay, so in order to make sure everything is at the center, the anchor point is at the center, I'll just quickly go to Modify, Center Pivot. Okay, we'll just make sure it's definitely at the center. And all right, let's come back to render cam, and we're ready to start animating, rotating this in 360 degrees now. And just so you know, if you have grouped things together, it's very important that you're selecting this group over here in the outliner and animating it rather than selecting the individual component. So you make sure you're always coming back over here to animate it. And so let's go to the bottom, and let's turn and find our time slider and range slider. So you just right click on this dotted parts over here, and you should be able to see the range and time slider. Make sure they are turned on. What this means for the range slider, it is amount of frames that we would like to animate. So as for how many frames to animate and so on, let's refer back to your blackboard. For character class, you're in week 10, you should be able to see these, and for the environment class, you'll be somewhere in your blackboard around week 10 or 11 as well. So for the animation keyframe, here's what I want to do. I'll break it down and explain to you. So if you want, you can follow exactly what we have here. If not, you can sort of think about it, understand it, and you can extend it on your own as well. So the concept is this. We would like to have each each turntable. So we would have the wireframe, we would have the normal maps, and we would have the lighting and shaded and textured view and so on. And so each turn would be 7 seconds, and so each second has 24 frames, and that makes a total of 168, and that's where this number comes in. So make sure you have 0, 0 on the left, and 168 and 168 on the right. So that means that's the whole 7 seconds worth of animation frames here. And let's have a look at the break now. So what this 7 second means, it's for 6 seconds, it will go one circle, and there'll be 1 second of transition. Because as you know, when this mesh turns, as it goes on to the next, from wireframe to the checkered, for example, map, there will be 1 second of transition, and which we will need to also render, so it would successfully transit. So we know that in 6 seconds, it would turn 360 degrees. And we're working this part out now because we already know it's 168 frames. We've set up the timeline. Now we need to figure out how much to rotate in 168. So we want to change the y value. We're not so sure. We know 360 is one round, but for that extra 1 second of rotation for transition, we need to figure out what's the exact number. Okay, let me just continue to explain and hope you understand it. So 6 seconds plus 1 second transition. We know 6 seconds, it's the full 360 turn, and that additional 1 second needs to maintain the same speed that that 7 seconds rotate one round. So what we need to do is we will need to divide 360 degrees, the full circle, by 6 seconds, which means that we know that 1 second, the character is rotating at 60 degrees per second. So if we want it to go for 7 seconds, it means that 6 seconds, which is the 360 degrees, plus 1 more second, which is 60, which is 420 turn. So that's how we calculate this, and so we know we can create this. So if you want to make it longer and so on, you can do so by using the same logic. If not, I'm more than happy for you to use this. So let's do that. So let's select this mesh over here, and you come over here to 0, and you come over to the attributes editor, or you can, all depends, you can come to the channel box as well, and you just come to rotate Y, and you just right click, key selected, so it's Y, it's 0 here, and you come over to the end at 168, you key in 420, and right click, key selected. So now you see, you can hit this arrow over here, it plays in one whole full circle, and some of you, it may not be playing in real time, so you go playback speed, make sure it's real time so you can get a feel. It might be too fast, too slow, so that's that. And just to show you even with more clarity, so 6 seconds, it should be the full circle, right? So 6 seconds times 24 frames is actually 144. So what that means, if we were to come to 144, it should come to the exact, one round full circle. But it's not doing it over here. It is because if you notice, it slows down at the beginning, it goes normal, and then it slows down at the end as well. So we want to make that, we don't want that. Basically we want it to be constant, just so that we can really animate it properly, so that it's just one constant turn, 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 turn. So we can change this by coming over here, this fourth icon from the top. You click this, it would open this up, and this is sort of like the graph editor for this speed, or this animation graph editor speed thing. So this basically controls the rotation, and if you see this curve, this shows that that's why it's slow at the beginning, it goes normal, and it slows down at the end. So now we want to make this one straight line, and here you just need to click these two icons, first this one, and this is what you get, one straight line. So that means the speed is consistent, so this will be great for us to be able to properly fade into the next turn, next material's turn, and so on. So if you go full screen again and play this, you would see that right now everything is consistent. And if you were to come to exactly, oh, let me just stop this, come to exactly 144, you notice that how it's facing the front now. Let me just go to render cam. So it's facing directly the front, right the same as 0. See, nothing's changed. So from 144 onwards, so from 145 to 168, this is worth 1 second, and this 1 second we can use to fade to the next one from here to here, this 1 second over here. So this is what we will do in, you can do this in After Effects, and so basically 6 seconds is one full circle up to here, and from here onwards you can start fading into the next one. So I'll be showing you guys how to do that in After Effects, in classes and so on, so that's pretty straightforward, so we wouldn't go into that. So that's basically how you create a turntable for this, and basically you can move on to render this and you should be fine. So now that you have this, and we would want to create the next one. Let me just open up Blackboard. So for character class, we've got 5 things you will need to render. So, and I know for 3D environment, that's only probably the textured maps, including normal and specular, and the wireframe, and perhaps the only color and diffuse map. So for environment class, you don't have to worry about these 2, but for character, you need all 5 of this. So let's say now we've basically settled this, and now we want to create this. So let's just maintain this. You can finish rendering this, and let's save as another file. So turntable. So this was previously the full textured version. Full texture. Let me just put a dash over here. And so let me just save this. Yep. And now we want to create the next one, which is only color and diffuse map. So let's save as only color and diffuse. And just continue. And what we can do over here, we can even delete the lighting if we want to. Let me just go back to perspective so it's easier to move around. All right, so let's, we can delete the lighting. So it's just purely looking at just how the diffuse map itself and the color looks like. And let's go to lighting and use default lighting. And let's go to hypershade. And let's go to your character, graph network. Click this just to confirm. All right. Okay, so now, and if we want to, we can, to have more clarity, this is the bump map, and this is the diffuse, which is what we want. The specular is what we do not want, so we can delete this, and we can delete the bump as well. So now this character mesh would only have the diffuse and color map on it. Likewise, we can look at the pedestal, and we could delete the bump as well, which is this top one. So it's only remaining the color, and this one, it's just the diffuse as well. So that should be fine. So if you see how now, there is basically no normal and no specular, no lighting. So it's basically just seeing how the texture looks like without all this. But you see by default, because it is a blend, so you see the specular, it's pretty shiny on this object or this mesh over here. So let's go back to Attributes Editor. Let's go to Character Texture. And by default, let's turn off your specular color. So we're just really seeing this flattened view of your character. And before you render, just make sure you come to Render Settings, come to Render Options, enable Default Light, make sure that it's turned on, and obviously your renderable camera is Render Cam, and just close this. And let's go back to Panel, Perspective, Render Cam, and basically this is the thing that you can render. So that's that. So that's the only color and diffuse. You can save this. And now the next one is the silhouette. So the silhouette, let's go command, just save another one. Silhouette. Not sure if I spelled this right. All right, so silhouette, it's pretty straightforward as well. So let's select everything and just right click and just assign favorite, or just assign just favorite material. Let's go for a Lambert. All right, so Lambert over here, we can come to Lambert. Let's call this silhouette, and color, basically just go full black. And that's basically what silhouette, how you can create silhouette. So silhouette allows us to have a look at the character and make sure there's no sharp edges coming out. You know, there's no pointy, it means all the mesh has been modeled smoothly, every part, the chest, you know, the arms, the fingers, the hands, you know, the face, the ears, everything, it's properly. There's no random stuff popping out, you know, extruding out weirdly. So silhouette allows us to check that. But you notice how this one messes up the pedestal, sort of covers the feet, so we can't see anything. So what you can do with the pedestal is you assign a new favorite material, and you just call it, it is a silhouette as well, and but instead of black, we will go like, you know, dark gray. So it is still there, and it's so that, you know, it's consistent. So a case can be made to just delete the pedestal at this point, but well, for consistency's sake, we can just leave it there and just let us focus on the silhouette. So that's basically that. So you can save this, you can render this, and now the next one is to create the checkered, if not mistaken. Yep, the checkered map. Okay, all right, so let's Control Shift S. Let's go for checkered. I hope I spelled this right. Okay, so checkered map, we can just select everything, right click, create a new favorite material, just keep it Lambert as well, because we don't want it to be shiny. We just want to keep it, you know, just purely objective, just to see how this looks like. And okay, so you come to checkered, the material, in attributes editor, you come to color, you click on this icon over here, and it's as simple as clicking on checker, and you see everything turns on. And okay, so the idea of checker is for us to be able to see that the character or the mesh has been UV'd correctly. So what does it mean? It means that if, let's say, the body and the head, the UVs are not done properly, which means that the UVs for the head is much smaller, you would see that the square on the head will be much bigger than the square on the body. And it's not to do with proportion, it has actually to do with the actual size. And so, and obviously right now the box, everything is very big, so it's a bit hard to see. So we need to adjust this. So let's come back to attributes editor. You have to look at the color over here. You click this through. You can change the colors if you want, but obviously we leave it at black and white. Place 2D textures right over here. Repeat UV, you know, around 20. Let's have a look. Well, that's well, good, but I think we can just go a bit more. Maybe, hang on, let's come back over here. Color, and place 2D textures. Let's go for 25. All right. So there you go. So you see the boxes should be consistent across everywhere. So in a way, this pedestal, it's UV'd not correctly. So you see how the square is this size, and over here, the checkered is much more smaller. So this is supposedly the wrong way to do it. So, I mean, the wrong way to do UV. So just to point this out, so this is what checkered map is for, to just check whether your UV has been done properly and everything is consistent and so on. So now you can save this. And the last one would be the wireframe on shaded mesh view. All right, so let's do that. So let's save another file, wireframe, and shaded. So let's do that. So let's create, once again, assign a new favorite material, a Lambert, and okay, let's call this the shaded wireframe. All right, so for this wireframe render, we'll be looking at another technique, and to do that, because the ones that we've learned in class, it's good, but it will not be able to batch render correctly when we do that later on. So let's quickly learn this new technique. It's almost the same, but it's just a minor difference over here. So let's come back to our shaded wireframe over here, and let's just make this a bit brighter. and because we want this to be a bit brighter, and then the wireframe could be black in that sense. And so let's just a bit more white, should be good. All right, and so by default we would want to go to the mental ray options in the shader group. So let's click this, and usually by default we would be enabling over here. This is what we learned, but this would have issues with the batch render, so we would want to come to custom shaders instead. So let's go to custom shaders. So for contours, make sure you've not clicked any of this. Let's come to custom shaders over here. You see this contour shader, so let's click on this, and over here we just type in contour, and what we want is this. Just click this, the contour shader simple. So just click this, and this would bring this up, and this would basically replace what we've learned earlier. So we can experiment with the width, but for this, you know, I know I have to make it really small because the default 0.2 is really huge, thick lines. So this is the settings I found that's good. You may try play around from here, and so this is basically this, and then the rest is the same, where we have to go back to render settings, and we will have to go to configuration, show advanced settings. There are two things we need to look at, which is at the bottom, contours, enable contour rendering, and around all polyfaces. So configuration, we just need to come to contours, these two, and then we go to quality, which is just one main thing, which is show advanced settings, and under legacy options at the bottom over here, and we just go sampling mode, change to legacy sampling mode. So there are three things to look at render settings. Make sure you have those up and going, and now we can do a quick preview of how this looks like. So there you go. So something like this should look pretty good already, and good for your turntable. You may adjust the thickness and so on, and in this case when you batch render, it shouldn't have this problem if we use this shader simple option. So all in all, you should be having, you know, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You should be having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different scene files, and each that you can render. And make sure you keep a master copy that you do not adjust anything, so that if anything goes wrong, you can always come back to your master turntable file. And for the 3D environment class people, so you would have 3 different key objects. So you would have basically 3 key materials, which is the full textured including lighting, and only color diffuse, and the wireframe shaded. So for the 3D environment class, basically it would mean you would have 9 different scene files that you can render, and obviously one more is the master. And for our 3D character class, I should have 5 scenes files that you can render, and 1 is your master. So that's basically that in terms of setting up the turntable and rendering the different materials. And if you need help to really put it into After Effects and so on, you can always email me and we'll see how it goes. Thank you so much for your time.